Today is Tuesday, and we're on LIGHTBOB TV, episode 8, and we're talking about fixtures. And in that little segment of we're going to be talking about commercial and hospitality fixtures that delivers result, and how do we work this inside our program of circadian lighting. I thought about this because whenever I get asked, like what fixture should I use, what brand, what this, it's not really about the brand, but making sure that we understand the basic principle and that we apply the right fixtures for those principles. So once we have established our strategy, and we talked about this in the previous episode. Once we know where we want to have some general diffuse, when we want to have some directional, maybe we want to have some directional suspended, maybe we want to have some general diffuse on the wall, or once we have a strategy that defines our little concept, then it's time to think about the fixture so that we can start delivering that strategy, and also that will become part of the system. So in commercial and hospitality projects, you'll find out that the fixture shape how light is experienced, and there's a reason for that. Is that we normally start with a concept, and then we try to follow that concept along the 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 program of the architecture. Um, Very rarely will, because the lighting fixtures are there to enhance the architecture. They're there to reveal certain area. They're, by themselves, they will, as we will talk, there is some decorative element that, oh my God, look at that piece. But most of the time, it's just to help the experience. And one of the things that's important is that what comes out of them. And if we don't understand that, and if we don't have an idea before we start of what kind of effect we want to create or what we want to generate in the space, it will be very, very difficult. So for me, lighting fixture does two things. First, it controls the lighting distribution. As we said, general, diffuse, directional. And when I say directional, it includes indirect, some direct, indirect, semi-indirect, all of that family of directional with shielding or without shielding. But most of all, what it does is once you have the right fixtures and the right environment, it gives you a beautiful and very um, agreeable, if I can say that in French, visual comfort. And that's, for me, is that what fixture does? Two things. It defines a visual comfort, and second, you control the light distribution. Wherever you want to have light everywhere, you have light everywhere. Wherever you want to have a sequence or you want to have a very defined control, you have it. Now, how does this match with circadian design? Well, if we pick the right fixtures and if we have the right design intent, it will support our circadian biological intent. The fixture should be just that. There's nothing else that the fixture should do, because that's how it is. So, what's our goal? Well, first of all, as a lighting designer, our first goal will be to deliver the right light. Make sure that we have the right light type of lighting effect, and also in the right way. If we start in the morning and we go at lunch, it's very important that our light is high so that we have this. And then when we start to go on a lower, it's important that the light follows the movement. And also, so basically, we want to have the light to deliver the right light in the right way and for the right environment. Okay, so the last point is the right environment. Well, if you have bay window that are looking outside and you're working on a palapas, you don't need to have circadian lighting. You have it live in your face. But if you have an office in Anchorage, Alaska, and you see the sun, 12 hours a day during the summer, but you don't see the sun at all during the winter, you have a different environment, which mimicking this circadian level of light will help you to have more sanity in your life. So now let's talk about linear system for a minute. So when we do commercial project, linear system are very how could I say that, convenient. Why? Because we can follow direction, we can predict area, we can fill a space with linear line, and more and more you'll see this in and if we have a larger open space, it's very easy to give orders and also to use it for, let's say, indirect lighting, which is directional towards the ceiling, bouncing back, right? And also, linear lighting system will provide you, if God, if you have the right calculation, it'll provide you with a pretty uniform lighting all around your space. So by having these lines at the right spacing, the space will look pretty uniform inside, right? And then it will also contribute to your melanopic contribution during the day, right? So linear systems are good for that. Now let's talk about recess. And again, as you see, I was talking about linear system, but mostly directional linear system. If we have linear system that are, just before we move on to the recess, if we have linear system that are translucent, now we're having a general diffuse contribution. So again, linear system is not the source, is the fixtures that delivers the light. And that's why I wanted to make a little clarification, because when we're going to talk about recess, right? So now we have a recess fixtures, and more you'll see that some manufacturers have evolved and create some beautiful accessory like insert that are frosted, that gives you this beautiful general diffuse glow. But also the recess have been identified as a directional light forever. Since we started with a lamp and we started integrating lighting fixtures into the ceiling, recess lights were mostly identified as directional light. And in commercial environment, you'll see them all the time. They're integrate into the ceiling. They can also be mounted on the surface. And what they do is that with LED, now they pretty much balance the performance. Because in the past, we had to really calculate where the center filament was inside the bulb so that we would get the maximum distribution out. But now with LED, we have a chipset that is giving us the light and are making them very, very efficiently. And also, because of that, what happened is that the fixture went from very big to getting smaller and smaller. The last one I saw uh, this week was 1 inch diameter. So as you see, we went from 6 inch, 7 inch, 8 inch. Now we're getting down to 1 inch. So as I was explaining to you when I was talking to you about decorative, now we're going to talk a little bit about different pendant. And pendant could be two type of light, but mostly you will have them into general diffuse family. And what their role is in the general diffuse family is that they will define the space, because with general diffuse you have lights everywhere, ceiling, ceiling, floor, walls, everywhere. And normally we combine this with either recess or linear system, and we use those, most of those pendant, for decorative purpose. So some of them won't contribute much light because they have all kinds of intricate design, and they have beautiful shape, and they have amazing glass work or all kinds of fabrics, and etc., etc. And what we use them is that we use them to support transition. We use them to bring the night into the space. I mean, in the past, we used them as decorative elements. But now in circadian lighting, that's what they're going to do. They're going to take this big, heavy lighting that is going to fade down, and then you're going to have these beautiful fixtures that's going to light up, and that's going to welcome the lower lighting, and then you're going to start having your circadian transition going. So basically, when we are in a lobby, what are we trying to do? So we're trying to light it up so that we create identity, right? We want our reception to pop. We want our magnificent artwork to be lit. We want also staircase and access area very safe and secure, because this is the first impression. And also we want to make sure that all this program is taken care of, so that then we can start adding a layer, with the architecture lighting, and start working the circadian lighting. So basically, we have the bottom layer, we have the first layer, which is functional lighting and making sure that our basics are covered. And then we're going to start enhancing it with circadian lighting. And the more we put some accent, the more we have some beautiful decorative element, the more we start working at the ground level up, with the more we're revealing and also changing the scene from one picture to another picture. You're in the same space, but you're living the life change. Now, when we work or we start designing office space, we're not looking for that drama. We don't have these changes. We do have our circadian lighting go, but it won't be as dramatic, and we don't need to have as much emphasis on the architecture, on the art, or on the special feature. So what we'll be looking for is more a uniform, low glare distribution that will support the long hours that you're putting into the office space, right? So that, compared to all the layers, visual focus of hospitality and transition during the day. They both have a transition, but one is to enhance an experience, the other one is to enhance work. So, and I would also throw something else into this is that because I did build a lot of restaurant, and then when we are in a restaurant, we have additional items. As an example, we will try to control the contrast. Make sure that we have along our lighting program some stuff that pops, some stuff that don't pop, some that blend. So it is a very important thing to understand. And if you don't work with your FF&E Steam, not Steam but Team, if you don't work with the decorator, if you don't work with the people that do custom furniture, you may be missing the boat. Why? Because those are the indicator that you want to work with, and that you may want to use as perfectly integrated solution in when you're doing your lighting program, so that the contrast match well with it. Evening are 90% of, I would say, well, depending where the restaurant, but most restaurant, I'd say 75 to 90% of the money is made in the evening. And a very nice warm atmosphere is very important at night. So it is almost inconceivable that we don't have control over our lighting. And that's why, whenever I design lighting in a restaurant, second question I would ask, how much money did you allow for control? And then it would be like, what control? Then you're in trouble. But as you know, it's a dialogue. So now you can start to open. And I find it I find it way more dynamic when it's addressed at the beginning than in the middle of the project, where all the money is spent and everybody's tight, and then you say, oh yeah, by the way, we're going to need a $25,000 control system. That doesn't end well. But if it's at the beginning of the conversation and you say, okay, we're going to have an allocation for lighting control, and we should allow, let's say, XYZ. All right, now the client can start thinking with this, and can start thinking also that, okay, now that magnificent chandelier that I want, maybe I'll try to find some a little smaller, and I'll take some of that money and I'll allocate it to the control system. And when we do restaurant, most of the focus is on the table. And this is why I was very successful doing lots of restaurant. And once I start working with restaurant owner and developers, like, they love me, because that's where the experience go. You're receiving your plate and it's well lit. You're like, wow. Yes, you can enhance it with little accessory table, but when you do your lighting properly, you don't need these little table lights, because after a while they become nuisance, they become additional work, additional cost, and they're also, I call them romantic breaker, because you have this light in front of you. Now you got to move it, right? And it's not fun. So do the proper thing. And also make sure that each type of fixtures that you specify and that you work with, it follows your program. That, first of all, they're not the newest, not glary, that they will respond to your circadian lighting, and also that they are dimmable, so that, let's say you want to create, when it comes times comes, you want to dim them down. Well, you, you want to make sure that your fixture follows. I was working on a wellness center not too long ago, and I was I was stunned. First of all, that they were using fluorescent lighting and nobody said anything. Some 2 foot by 2 foot. And when I arrived there, I said, "This has got to go." Yeah, but we need to see. We need this. So I had to redo the whole lighting program with what I had and add on top of that control and lighting that would work with the circadian. We managed to do 90% of the program. The only thing that we didn't implement was the computer circadian system, but at least we got the fixtures, and eventually that's something that we can have. So we started with general soft lighting. We had accent on the art, and then, of course, where there was no window, we had this gradual circadian transition working. Um, in contrast, the last corporate office I did um, was a bit different. We had linear system, suspended, indirect, and then we also had some tunable white, which at the time I didn't really, like I said, I was not really aware, and that's a couple year down. I was not too aware about the circadian level, but I liked the fact that I could go from cold to warm. So it was kind of a, I would say, I don't like to say that word, but it was kind of a homemade circadian level at that time because I didn't have the specific tech to implement the program. But the system of suspension, I've been into that for a while. And now, right now, I'm finishing a high-end residence, and everything is circadian. So we did some suspension, we did some recess, we did some horizontal insert into wall, we did insert on the baseboard, and all of those will be programmed according to our circadian, so that as they're living their normal life, lighting is enhancing their quality of life, and they don't have to worry about pushing a button or this or that. Uh, Mine, we do have part of that system, some override local remote station. Let's say over the kitchen island. Let's say you're doing some cooking or cutting or some stuff, and the lights are too low. You can go and have a working scene which bypass the circadian level, but once you're done, we'll start to follow it again. So there is different way of programming and making sure that the system follow the rhythm, but also if you need something specific for doing a specific task, you can override it. On my PoE segment for the circadian, as you have all your fixture connected as individual device, and also you don't have any flickering, you have your sensor, everything is part of the system. You are simplifying your wiring system. You are simplifying the way that everything is controlled. You're also centralizing everything in one box so that later it is easier to address, to control, to troubleshoot, to maintain, and so forth. And one thing that really seduced me um, when I was working and studying and bringing back the and adopting really POE lighting was the fact that you 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 save up to 75 to 80% of the traditional wiring. And I come from the theater world, and that's why very early in my career I was in lighting control, because when you work in a theater, every light has its own dimmer. Every light is connected on a separate dimmer. Every light has a home run to the dimmer panel, because rarely you will have a local dimmer on the stage. The dimmer will be in a bank somewhere backstage or in an area, and everyone has a home run. So you have bundles of wires that are amazingly big, and that goes all across, and that service each one of those lights on the stage, or in front of the stage, or the ground plug, because sometimes you want to put light on the floor to create some effect. So all those, this is a lot of wiring. Now with when we're thinking about PoE, now we're like, okay, now we have, you know, a cleaner installation. We have a way more flexible, because if I want to group these three lights, and I don't need to connect to have them connect prior to that. They can be assembled just by a couple stroke of keyboard. And now in 3 months, we changed the living room around, and the reading, these three lights that we use for reading need to be on that side. Well, guess what? I can group them and give them the function of being the reading lights for that. And all of that, I could do all this from my office. I don't need to go to the client anymore, right? So again, this is for me where PoE is changing the world one light at a time. Now, when we think about operation and performance, we do have some limitation. Yes, we do have wattage limitation. We do have, like we cannot put the 500-watt load on one Cat 6 cable. But it is, we can put 5 lights, we can put 6, doesn't matter. We have all kinds of big array of lighting fixtures, plus anything custom that I can do. Like I said, and I told you before, my other company is we do custom lights with 3D printing. And we use aerospace technology, material that are way stronger than anything you see. So what happened is that because of that, now we can really go down and customize some products. So we don't have a limit anymore where fixtures are, that's what they do. We have, as long as we understand that what we want to have our visual comfort, right? We want to make sure that they follow our circadian targets. We want to also make sure that they are easy to maintain. So once we have and understand all that, now we can move on, and we are limitless as far as where we can put fixtures. We have access, we can put one. We can replace them. We have, let's say we have a troubleshooting to do, it's super simple. So having this as in your toolbox and working with that will help you to make better decision in your design. And fixture by themselves don't work and operate alone. So we always need a control system. We always need driver. We always need some kind of a dimming system. We always need some sensor. We always need to schedule. So when we think about all the needs that our fixture needs, when we start designing in hospitality, high end or commercial, the main thing that we have to understand is that we want a seamless response. We don't want to have like problems with control. We don't want to have a problem. Well, this is not compatible. You need to have a different remote control to control those lights. And we certainly don't want to be adjusting this manual on a board. So our design has significant consequence on the application that we're going to be doing. And since we're talking about fixtures are not the aesthetic, right? And it's important to understand that the fixtures are not the aesthetic only. And I'm going to say that again, the aesthetic only. I forgot the word only earlier. But because what's happening is that once we understand that the fixture can be beautiful, but also what we want to know is that a general diffuse or is this a directional fixture? Once we clear that out, then we can start building. And some case I did at the time in New Mexico. I had these directional lighting fixtures that were 6-inch diameter, and they were about 25 feet in the air. And I didn't like what they were producing. So at the time, I just came back from Murano, and I was doing a lot of glass. So I create these beautiful glass shape, and I suspended them about 4 feet from the ceiling. And then what I did is I create a plate that was going over that fixtures, and I had a little device that were concentrating. It's called a snoot. The light just the size of the glass. That's it. So suddenly I took the ceiling from 25 feet, I brought it down to 20 feet, and instead of lighting up the whole ceiling, I was lighting up these beautiful pieces of glass that were underneath each fixtures. And I gave them a little shape, so when you walked in, it felt like they were flying piece of glass, like a flock of seagull. And then we had this majestic big window that were reflecting, because when I did my calculation where to drop them, I wanted to make sure that first we see them from the outside and we create, but also from the inside, they were giving us double of the amount because we could see them in the glass as a reflection. So again, all of those creative thought were there because I knew how to handle the source. I knew what to do with it. Oh, and I also changed the source for a very narrow par, less wattage, because the fixtures were rated for 150 watt. I put a 75 watt spot because I just wanted the middle to hit the glass, and that's it. And I knew that if I used a higher wattage, because I modified the fixture, the heat would affect the performance of the fixtures. So anyway, that was because I understood how the fixture worked, I understood the source, and I understood also the effect that I wanted to create when you walk in. And that's why I think when we do the thinking and we line up all our needs, we can achieve some very, very beautiful effect. So again, maintenance, energy, right? That's the first one. We want to make sure that we are able to manage our fixtures so that if we need to save energy, we want to make sure also that the maintenance is easy. I see people designing these micro these micro cove, very, very small. Well, if you try to maintain it or fix it, it's very easy to slide a strip in there and bring it with your hand. But when it's time to pull it out, it's not that easy. So maintenance sometimes have to be. Plus, also, you always have to wonder what would that give, that what effect would that contributing by having a micro cove. Um, about 10 years ago, I bought a styrofoam company and I started designing all kinds of cove in styrofoam, finishing them with cement and proper coating, exactly because of that. Because I first of all, I didn't trust the worker on job site, and second, I wanted to have control over the light, but also the maintenance, and I could cut any shapes that I want so that I could create any user experience because I didn't have a limit with the shapes. And the last thing we want also with our fixture is we want to make sure that they are consistent for the there as long as possible. I'm not going to say for a lifetime because I'm not a big lifetime believer, either trends or trouble, dysfunction, not dysfunction, but malfunction. It's there's a lot of things that can happen in the lifetime of a fixture. So the idea is try to think for as long as you can. And like I said earlier or previously, I mean, sometimes I run on some of my job that I did 25, 30 years ago, and they still look like beautiful because of all those smart choices I made at that time. And and if we don't do that, it's not that the project's gonna fail, it's just that you're entering into a chain of reaction that is not fun. It is really not fun to start having fixture that start failing all about at the same time. Maybe you made a great sales at the beginning because you sold those fixture much more that they were worth, but over time, as they're failing and as they becoming weaker or they're becoming problematic, your reputation is on the line. And trust me, the only finger that's going to be pointed at is you. The electrician is gone, the contractor is gone, the maintenance guy is gone, or I've been to 5 different versions, and you go there to show one of your client or even to see it for yourself, and the owner is going to say, well, that piece of shit you sold me, sorry about the language, but those fixtures that you sold me are not good. So the decision that we're making, that you're going to be making right now, are very, very important. And you have to think of the effectiveness to the life of the project or more. So it is very, very important. Wow, what an episode! What an episode! So as you understand, as you see, you are the angular point um, of all this data, and depending where you think you are or where you know you are, your decision have ripple effect. And by doing this and knowing this, you're empowering yourself to make better decisions. And like, I will never say it enough, but continuing to educate yourself, to learn, to ask people around you and observe, you will definitely enhance your design and the life of your clients. So tomorrow we're talking about manufacturing, and this is an amazing amazing show because, again, manufacturing has so much to bring, and there's so much complexity that can be gotten from different manufacturers. And sometimes, that's all it takes to start a great partnership. So have a good day. Thank you for